Hello, I'm Garfield Benjamin, and I'm excited to share this work with you at Fact. So my paper is on hashtag fuck the algorithm, algorithmic imaginaries, and political resistance. In this work, I explore issues of how responses to algorithmic oppression are dealt with, both in terms of physical protest and how that relates to the way it's mediated online through specific hashtags. So the context of the work is that during the pandemic in 2020, in the UK, the A-level exams for leaving school ran up against the problem of the inability to have exams in person. And the government's response, feeding into the concerns of some media outlets as well, was to tackle the issue of perceived grade inflation, particularly through teacher-assigned results. And so to do this, they asked Ofqual, the regulator for exams, to come up with an algorithm to assign grades. And they did this by ranking students within their class, within their school, and then comparing that to historical data from that school, and then assigning them the average grade for that rank in that particular school. And this led to huge numbers of students, almost 40% of students had their grades dropped, which of course had a massive knock-on effect for university applications and people's futures. There were massive protests by students and legal challenges as well, and all this led to a U-turn by the government. But one particularly noteworthy aspect of these protests were some of the various chants that were made, and particularly one that got picked up by the media and then spread quite widely online was the idea of fuck the algorithm. It came to sort of encapsulate the movement and the protest. And so that's the issue that I'm exploring in this work. To do this, I'm looking at the idea of algorithmic imaginaries by Tina Bucher, and also how it relates to resistance in the work of people like Stefania Milan and Becky Kazansky. I situate this within broader socio-technical imaginaries by people like Jasanoff and Kim, as well as other forms of algorithmic resistance and how that relates to political resistance. The work of Sasha Cassandra Chock, the work of the hashtag activism work of Sarah Jackson, Moya Bailey, and others, and situating this within the specific protest in the UK. And so the background for this is that the hashtag of fuck the algorithm existed on Twitter long before the protests, but it was mostly related to content recommendation algorithms and content moderation. But after the protests, there was a shift in how this hashtag was used. It suddenly became much more popular, and it also changed in the way it was used. And so through this phrase, the protests were trying to encapsulate quite a complex socio-technical assemblage. They were focusing not on the algorithm itself, but on the decision to use the algorithm, the design of the algorithm, and the way that fitted into political priorities and agendas. And also after the protests themselves, this led to much wider usage online, but again in a broader sense. So whereas it carried on being as it was before with the sort of frustrations and the affective quality of content recommendation algorithms, but also starting to be applied to other algorithms in society and how that's related between online and offline spaces, particularly in terms of protests by indigenous groups in the US, for example, and how that's blocked by Twitter or by as a sort of rallying call for other political causes as well. And so I argue in the paper that this created a shift in the algorithmic imaginaries and a shift in protest imaginaries as well, and how these two relate to one another. So please do have a look at the paper, watch the video, and I would be absolutely delighted to discuss and hear your thoughts and questions. Thank you.